All right, let's talk about a viral video from K-Rated that's been getting a ton of attention. It makes some pretty explosive claims about the conflict between Iran, Israel, and the US. So today, we're going to break down the key arguments from that video piece by piece just to understand the very specific and very provocative perspective it's putting out there.
Right off the bat, the source video hits you with this really startling claim. It sets the tone for the entire story it's telling that a new US missile was tested by, of all things, targeting a school for young girls. Now, this one allegation, it's absolutely central to how the video wants you to see this whole conflict. So to really get a handle on this narrative, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at the claims of civilian targeting. Then we'll see how the video contrasts that with Iran's military strikes. After that, we'll dive into the shifting international scene, the internal pressures it says Israel is under, and finally, its pretty grim prediction for where this is all going.
Okay, let's start with that first and frankly most serious allegation in the video, that civilian infrastructure isn't just getting caught in the crossfire, but is being targeted on purpose. The video argues that there's a strategy here to cripple the very backbone of society. It lists things like pharmaceutical plants that make anti-cancer drugs, steel plants, ports, and even homes. It paints a picture of a campaign that's designed to cause maximum chaos for everyday people.
And here's the core example the video really hangs its hat on. It claims a new U.S. ballistic missile was tested on a school's sports facility right in the middle of a girls' volleyball match, leading to 21 deaths. This moment is presented as the ultimate proof of that anti-civilian strategy it's talking about. And then, the source video just completely flips the script. After making all these claims about US and Israeli targets, it pivots to describe the kind of targets it says Iran is hitting in response. And this slide right here, this is the whole argument in a nutshell. On one side, you have civilian targets. On the other, what are described as purely military assets. The entire narrative really hinges on this stark contrast, framing the conflict as a battle between two completely different philosophies of war. And to back this up, the source gets really specific with its list of what it calls legitimate military targets. We're talking alleged gatherings of U.S. Marines, sophisticated anti-drone and radar systems, and even barracks inside U.S. bases. The point it's making is that these are precise, strategic military strikes.
So how precise are we talking? Well, the video actually brings in 2 sources to add some weight here. It cites the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, claiming it reported an 80% success rate for Iranian missiles. And then it mentions Professor Ted Postal, who it says analyzed footage and put that success rate even higher, at 90%. All right, now the video zooms out a bit. It argues that this conflict isn't just happening in a bubble. The perspective here is that all this tension is causing some major shifts, both geopolitically and economically, especially with traditional U.S. allies. A huge point the video makes is that traditional European allies are supposedly starting to back away. It claims that France, Spain, and Italy have all put up roadblocks restricting U.S. military access to their airspace and bases for anything related to this conflict. The picture it's painting is one of growing isolation. The economic fallout is another massive focus, especially for the Gulf states. The source describes this atmosphere of, intense fear for expats and businesses, claiming that critical infrastructure, airports, fuel facilities, ports, and major hubs like Kuwait and Dubai are now direct targets. And to put a number on that global economic hit, the source throws out this absolutely massive figure. A supposed $120 billion has already been erased from global stock markets, all because of the instability this conflict is allegedly causing. Okay, so from the global stage, the narrative then turns inward. It pivots to Israel itself, claiming the country is dealing with its own huge internal problems, namely a shortage of soldiers and deep political divisions that, according to the source, are threatening the whole war effort. Now, to get what the video is arguing here, you first have to understand this one group, the Haredi Jews. The video explains them as a large, ultra-Orthodox community that has traditionally been exempt from mandatory military service. And it's this exemption, it claims, that has become a major source of conflict inside Israeli society. And the video puts a number to this. It claims there are 80,000 Haredi men of military age who aren't serving. According to this narrative, that specific number is the direct cause of a severe manpower crisis for the Israeli military, happening at the worst possible time. And to really drive home just how serious this is supposed to be, the source uses this quote. It attributes it directly to the head of the IDF. The statement,
"We will collapse," is used to frame this manpower issue not just as a problem, but as a full-blown existential crisis, a potential breaking point for the military.
So this is the big question, right? Where does the source think this is all going? Well, it pretty much writes off diplomacy and paints let's just say, a very grim picture for the future. Now, the video does mention some back-channel chatter supposedly happening through Pakistan, but it claims that any kind of real ceasefire is completely off the table. It says Iran is demanding full international guarantees against any future attacks, and if they don't get them, the only solution will be found on the battlefield. And this is where it lays out a truly bleak domino effect. The argument it makes is that if the fighting goes on for just a few more months, it'll trigger a U.S. withdrawal from the Middle East. That, in turn, leads to a collapse of the dollar, then a global depression, and the final domino, a massive worldwide food crisis. The consequences, it argues, will be catastrophic for everyone. And there you have it. That's the core perspective presented in the source material we've just walked through. It frames a conflict where one side is on the brink of collapse, all leading to a military showdown that it predicts will have devastating consequences for the entire world. And it leaves us with one final, provocative question. If this narrative were to play out, what could that future actually look like?